You're in the hands of an adolescent.
It's mystery. I don't like mysteries. Your bellyache. I gotta kill you right now.
Aye, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Warp Core podcast. I am UrzaMaster. With me, as always, Lord Uther, and joining us today, Lieutenant Marion Cobra Cobretti. I welcome you both back to the Warp Core podcast. This is episode 20 of the show. We are very excited to be sharing with you a broad stroke ahead of season 2. And that is, of course, of Strange New Worlds, which we teased in our last episode. I know it's been some time. We've had some tech issues trying to get some material put together, but tonight we are back. We are talking Strange New Worlds, which arguably has been our most mentioned, most talked about, probably favorite series so far, outside of maybe Season 3 of Picard. To give us some background and to get us started tonight, I'm going to turn it over to Cobra. And then we'll just roll. We're going to go through all 10 episodes.
Well, thank you, UrzaMaster. Thank you, Lord Uther. And thanks to you at home. Crime is the disease, and I am the cure. Yes, we are discussing tonight the 11th Star Trek series, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which in all fairness is actually a spin-off of the 9th Star Trek series, Star Trek Discovery, in which several of the characters that appear on this show were in fact introduced during that second season, and the seeds were planted in order to get their very own show, which we are now celebrating and enjoying. And we'll say right off the top of the bat, this is unlike any new Star Trek show you've seen on the airwaves. Whereas Discovery and Picard all followed carefully scripted, carefully crafted, curated, serialized storylines. This one has a new mandate to boldly go where few shows have gone before. This one tells its stories individually with plenty of standalone moments to be able to hook viewers in all along throughout the season. That is not to say that there are not story and character elements that are not developed and nurtured and followed through, but there's much more of a finite sense of place, time, character, action in this particular outing than in previous episodes. And it's refreshing. It actually takes you back not only to the original series, but the early years of the Berman verse with Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Voyager and the Next Generation. In terms of being able to counterbalance, to paint broad strokes and directions that they want the characters to go, while being able to spend time with those individual characters in setups and plot lines all their own. This show was created by Akiva Goldsman, Alex Kurtzman, and Jenny Lumet, all of whom have worked on previous incarnations of the new Star Trek streaming universe to date. It's also, knock on the proverbial wood, had the least amount of behind-the-scenes turmoil than some of the other shows had, where we had showrunners coming and going and being fired mid-season or replaced or countermanded or so forth. In fact, Star Trek Picard Season 3 and this first season of Strange New Worlds seem to have had the least amount of drama in terms of bringing what you see on the page in front of the camera and into your living rooms. And I think that's reflected in the quality of the work, in so much as that you don't have writers' rooms with people chasing each other around the table with scissors and so forth, and human resource investigations and the like. So these are light on the drama behind the scenes, but plenty of drama in front of it. So as a Star Trek as a new show, we have a mixture of classic legacy characters interspersed with some brand new additions. Obviously, your lead of Anson Mount is Captain Christopher Pike, is the man in the center chair on the bridge of NCC 1701. His trademark when they're going into battle or warp appears to be hit it. So if Jean-Luc Picard favored make it so and engage, it appears that Pike says hit it, as if he was drag racing on La Brea Boulevard on a Saturday night. And we're all here for it. We also, of course, have a new incarnation of Spock, played by Ethan Peck. And he does sensational work in terms of his vocal timbre and in terms of his commitment to trying to wrap his arms around Spock's Vulcan heritage, but at the same time being stymied by those half-human genes, thanks Amanda, that he has been stuck with. So we have a new Spock. We also have a young, fresh-faced Cadet Uhura, just starting off her Starfleet career, and in fact, questioning whether she even wants to be in Starfleet. So it's a nice place for the character to evolve later into the communications officer that we will know, love, and respect. And we have these characters that are counterbalanced with some new faces to the bridge in the mix. Rebecca Romaine playing number one, aka Una Chan Riley. She is an Aurelian, so throughout the course of season one, we learn that she actually has been hiding her genetic identity. She comes from a race of beings that would modify their DNA to accommodate their environmental surroundings, and as a result, drew afoul of the Federation and were in fact banned from ever joining. So she's kept this sort of a secret from Starfleet and her own crew, her own captain. And so that plays for a lot of tension and drama throughout this first season. We have other terrific characters, Dr. Mabenga in the medical bay. Not only is he a avid fly fisherman on his shore leave, not only is he a doctor willing to experiment with pre-Starfleet, late 20th, 21st century medicines, he also has an emotional secret that he's keeping. His daughter has been struck by a catastrophic illness and is probably losing her battle with this terminal illness. And so he has spirited her away into some transporter buffers until he can discover the cure that he can rescue her. So it's a great shading for a character like that. It makes you feel the empathetic pull of a father willing to do anything to save his daughter. We have the legally blind Andorian engineer Hemmer, who is played by a legally blind actor, which is a first for Star Trek. So that's very exciting. And we also have a security officer, Lon Noonien Singh. And yes, that Noonien Singh is relevant, has ties to the famed villain Khan, Noonien Singh, from the Eugenics Wars. I'm sure you've seen him, whether he's Ricardo Montalban or Benedict Cumberbatch. She has strong ties with Una Chan Riley, and they have a relationship that they pursue through friendship and so forth throughout the first season as well. I think the big takeaway for me from this first season of Strange New Worlds, I think it starts with the guy in the chair, with Captain Christopher Pike. And I think what would be interesting from two diehard Trekkies like yourselves, take a moment and consider sort of, his leadership qualities, right? I mean, we don't even need to break it down the fourth wall and talk about Anson Mount's performance, which is terrific. But the idea that from the original series to the evolution of now, how the writing of Trek has had to evolve and grow, because you're no longer just a captain ordering a ship into battle or making these command decisions. You're in effect the father figure of a family, and a family that doesn't always get along and doesn't always see eye to eye, and may have conflicting agendas or personalities to boot. And I think what's really struck me, whether it's James T. Kirk, Jean-Luc Picard, Benjamin Sisko, Catherine Janeway, it's sort of this weird, like, very relaxed style of Pike. Now, you don't want to mess with him in a firefight by any means, and we've seen that throughout the season when he is forced to take up, arms for the Enterprise, or whether he's involved in perilous negotiations with alien species. But here is a guy who, honestly, he feels dialed back. He feels there's just something about him, something so zen, I guess. Now, he's struggling with his own personnel trauma. He's actually been given a glimpse at his own mortality, and he is aware that he's not sure exactly, how the circumstances were or when, but that he's seen his own death, and it's something that's shaken him to his core. In fact, when we first meet him, he's abandoned Starfleet entirely and gone off to live in the woods like Clint Eastwood in 1982's underrated spy thriller Firefox. So he's a man wrestling with this idea that, okay, I know that I have a finite amount of time left, and I don't know when my end is coming. And I think that might, I'll leave it to you guys to further tease that out, that might be part of the character that we're seeing. But here is a guy who is comfortable making steaks for the crew, hosting barbecues and the like, and he's kind of a seat of your pants calm that I don't know that any of the other captains or admirals or anyone we've encountered have really exuded that. There's always been, the intellectual cool of Jean-Luc Picard, or the fisticuffs of a William Shatner / Captain Kirk. So let's start by just briefly kind of picking at Christopher Pike and why is he just so darn appealing?
Well, I mean, there's so many layers of onion here, but let's start with the obvious. I mean, the man is gorgeous.
Great hair.
Great hair. I mean, you couldn't have cast a more perfect Christopher Pike. I have to be honest. He's got that Western appeal. In the film sense of Western. We see him in a Western setting right up front. He's dealing with these very manly sort of macho emotions, but on a higher level in a very Clint Eastwood fashion. I mean, he is Clint Eastwood, really. And I think the nice thing is he's a huge separation from the Christopher Pike we know from The Cage, or The Menagerie. That Christopher Pike was very much a reflection of masculinity of the era in which it was produced. And that's why they kind of trashed it and went with Kirk, of course. And the nice thing about this Pike is there's such dimension of character right out of the gate. You see him struggling. You see him bound to duty, but also sort of, like you said, a dialed back, foil to the Vulcan high sense of duty we get with Spock. It's very much like a reluctant, I'm going to fulfill my duty, I'm going to do it at the best of my ability, but I'm hesitant because at any time I could be in that BP chair kind of thing. So, it's interesting to see him as, in a relationship with another Starfleet officer, and having these, deep bonds with his first officer, which he has to go rescue in the first episode. And just the dynamic with which he, like you said, he runs his ship like a family. And that's something that, in the original series, it was very much a military-style organization. Without being militant. It was very tough to distinguish exactly how the captain felt for the crew, but it felt very sort of like real life William Shatner with the rest of the cast. They all sort of liked each other, but they all kind of had a chip on their shoulder against William Shatner. Kind of not unlike the military and hierarchy. But the cool thing about this Christopher Pike is he takes a very, like you said, 90s approach, late 80s, early 90s approach of the opposite of your Jean-Luc Picard, which of course Picard running around the same time as this series, timely. He invests in his crew as a family. He's building respect and rapport, the same way a father would, his children. He acts as their mentor. He's their resource. He is their commanding officer and requests respect, but he gives respect. He gives acknowledgement. He brings in Cadet Uhura, to the table with the senior officers. He wants to get to know the people around him so that they can be stronger and overcome greater obstacles. Because he himself is trying to overcome man's greatest obstacle, mortality, and the knowledge thereof. If you want to talk great writing, you can start and finish with Christopher Pike with this series thus far, because while it's not a serialized arc that they're going through, he really sets the stage, not just acting wise but writing wise, for this golden era of TV that we talk about in every episode, it feels like, of what this writing room, this showrunner, these actors are producing. And you can't, like you said, it starts and ends with the chair, and you can't separate the captain from the rest of the show, despite the fact that all the other characters on and off the ship are extraordinary. Christopher Pike really is Strange New Worlds.
First of all, anytime I hear someone use the term vocal timbre, it immediately draws my attention. Second of all, if you were to tell me that Cobra, his real name was Marion Cobretti,
All true.
never would have believed it or known it, quite frankly. So that's the first two pieces there. I can't remember if we talked about it on Warp Core or if it was Digital Escape that we talked about the idea of, are these captains like Kirk, Picard, Janeway, Sisko, Pike, are they the rule of thumb in Starfleet? Was that this show? Or was that Dep?
Yes.
It was on here. So, okay. I'm just trying to straighten that out, too. And you brought up the writing piece, which was something I was going to talk about. The stars have... Look at that. The stars have aligned again for a show to... And again, we're living in this golden age TV, whether it's Last of Us or, Picard Season 3 or...
The Idol. Just kidding.
Ahsoka, Andor, Mandalorian, which had a couple down episodes. But the writing is so good along with the acting. You're getting such depth. We talked about this before too, but such depth to these characters over just 10 episodes. And again, to UrzaMaster's point, you as soon as you say Kirk, you think Shatner. Like, there's no one else you really could have put in that role. I mean, Chris Pine did a nice job. I'm sorry. Kirk is always going to be Shatner, right?
Okay.
And I when you now, like, this idea of Pike, just the way, again, he holds to the chair, the way he speaks with this crew, we're getting all this depth to this captain in just 10 episodes where you're like, I would love for this, like, to be on the ship with this guy and have him running it, right?
Oh, yeah.
That respect is there. And
if you had to have a beer with any Star Trek captain, would it be Pike or would you choose one of the others? If you had to sit down for a beer.
That's a good one. Yeah,
obviously, it's a craft beer, but yes.
Oh, if it's craft, okay, that's a good point. Because if it's a craft beer, I'm probably, well, Jean-Luc, I'm guessing, because he has his own winery.
I gotta go with Picard. Yeah, I mean,
for that. Now, if
despite the fact I love Chris Pike, like,
if I'm gonna have like a Miller Lite
Or a Pabst
I'm
Blue
probably
Ribbon.
PBR was
Pabst Blue
Pike.
Ribbon. I'm probably going to have it with Pike as he's cooking up a steak in his
Nice.
quarters.
Nice.
Right? I mean, that would be the guy I want to talk to. And again, there, he's such a good actor and it's such good writing. It sets up the original series perfectly. I've been watching a lot of original series because on Pluto TV, they've got an all Star Trek channel. I think I was telling Urza about this. And it either is playing the original series or Next Generation. So it plays all the way through all original series episodes and then goes through every single season next gen and then starts over.
That's
Yeah,
the
I know.
dream
It
right
is.
there.
I love that station. But to watch Strange New Worlds and I'm watching these Trek episodes and original series, I'm like, it's just the perfect setup. Like the writers are very cognizant of the original series and other things that have happened. So much so that when I hear the name Noonien sing or song, and because Urza knows I have this issue with everything being connected, like in Star Wars, like it's way too connected in a sense, and that bothered me just a little bit. There needs to be some coincidence mixed in with some of this. So anyway, back to the idea of the writing is so good. Like I don't care that Khan's great whatever granddaughter or niece or nephew is on the ship, right? Like I don't care that coincidence is there, where that would typically bother me, because it's like, come on, really? They're on, I mean, on the Enterprise and what's going to happen later on. So all those things wrapped together, it's Pike makes it happen, makes you believe in him.
Favorite female character in this first season, and you've got a few to choose from between Cadet Uhura, Una, Lon, Nurse Chapel, and you can use any metric that you want. But who is your favorite supporting or lead female character?
Okay, I'll tell you who my favorite is, but I'm going to tell you the one I'm most impressed with.
Okay.
And it's two different things. I love the spin they put on Nurse Chapel versus the original series.
She's feisty.
And again, she is and she's supposed to be the comic relief too, right? But
Right.
we've also had that discussion where the comic relief part isn't even viewed as comic relief, though we know that she's kind of the character for that. Just like we said during Picard season 3, there was cheese everywhere. Like it was a big old cheese pizza, and with extra cheese on top and another layer on top of that, but they never played to that cheese. And that's what I like about Chapel. She is kind of that comic relief, as is one of the helmswomen.
Ortega.
Not Ortega. She kind of gives a little bit of that comic-y relief side with some of her quips back to Pike. But again, Nurse Chapel is the one that's impressed me the most.
You got to come with like these impossible questions because, like, obviously I'm.
So Una's my number one.
Oh God, yeah, Una.
Literally, her presence,
Yeah,
how
literally.
she deals with the crew. She was going to self-sacrifice at one point. She's like,
where
go ahead,
one
Pike.
goes to die.
Again,
But yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Urza. You want to jump in on that too? I'm guessing.
yeah, I mean, this is tough. I think I'd go Una too, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that literally every person in this cast is amazing.
Yeah.
And every female in this cast is like captured my heart at some point or another, including the daughter of Amenga, who we of course see in adult form in the episode of the Nebula, which was an incredibly written episode. I mean, the Elysian Dream, I think it was titled, or something to that effect. Just oddball, goofy, classic Trek trope of like strange nebula, right? But as much as I love Una, I'm so deeply intrigued and madly in love with Dr. Aspen. The sneaky, sort of sexy, sultry protagonist turned antagonist, like totally hit me for a curve mid-episode. Like, it felt a little like this seems like a trap, but then to have her be, and this, yeah, I loved it. This redeemed Star Trek V in a big way by introducing Sybok.
Right.
And, you know, and does it in such a subtle way that sets it up for future possible episodes. And, you know, Jesse James Keitel, first of all, is stunning in many ways, but what incredible acting. To play that, like, perfect muse to a Vulcan, but prey on the half-human side of Spock specifically, and, like, curl her little tendrils into him emotionally, but also appeal to his Vulcan, like, detachedness. I mean, unreal. You couldn't ask for a better, like, you know, if this was an original series episode, it's a one-off character. I really doubt that that's going to be the case because, hello, Sybok. I mean, you have such potential there. Plus the fact she gets away. Just, I mean, everything about that one-off character is such incredible energy for Star Trek. Now, being that it's a one-episode deal, I can't in good conscience say Dr. Aspen is my favorite, but she's the background on my computer because she's intense, she's a perfect villain, she's gorgeous, and I absolutely was thrilled by her appearance on this show, and just, that was an Emmy-winning performance, if I've ever seen one. If they give out Emmys for streaming, or if that's Oscars, give her an Oscar. Una has to take the number one spot. I mean, I'm sorry. I love all of the other characters. Lon is great. Ortega is great. Uhura is phenomenal. But Nurse Chapel, again, hitting on the Spock. You know, like getting some of that too. Like where I'm like, oh, I want that love story to develop so damn bad. I want the Ortega and Una love story to develop. Like or Ortega and Lon. I forget. I don't care. I want to see that. Like, there's so much just layering of intricate personal relationships. You kind of, because your belief is really suspended throughout most of these episodes, you sort of forget in some of these, they're like deep in space. You know, compared to where a lot of humanity has ever gone before. Like, they are going to have complex relationships. There's going to be some this and that between all of them that's going to be unpredictable. It's going to be awkward. It's going to raise these like personal and romantic tensions, and there's going to be jealousy, there's going to be intrigue, there's going to be, you know, some transgression. Like there's going to be some just very interesting ways they can craft future stories, and just to me it's so exciting to see all of this layered out because they may or may not use it, and it doesn't matter if they don't. That's the best part, is like when you're that close to that few people, because you got to remember the Enterprise is only what, like 100 or more at most of the entire crew, and we only see a few of them most of the time. But like they're in deep space. Like I think the thing you forget is unless you live in a town of like 150 people or so, you really don't realize that everybody knows everybody. Everybody gets to know everybody. People get to know everybody intimately sometimes. It really creates this unique dynamic that it does become like family, but in as much as it's family, it's not family, so it's also like the Real Housewives of Star Trek, in a way.
Greenlit.
You're right. The chops of the acting skills of this whole crew, I gotta say Rebecca Romaine seems to outshine all of them. Because she is this stoic, but involved, but sort of cheeky, and like there's a little something going on there that is just, it's sort of very vaguely alluded to, but you know there's something there. Doesn't matter what it is because you're hooked. Again, this show gets you from moment one, digs in and gives you this thrill ride through 10 episodes. First of all, if we could, let's adjourn for a moment and talk about our legally blind friend, Hemmer. Because Hammer really isn't in too many episodes, all things considered, in this series or this season. Roughly half of the episodes he appears in. You get a lot of his story
Yeah.
in the very last couple episodes. But the second he's introduced, you feel very close to him. It's this magnetic personality that just like you don't know why you're invested in his character, but you are, and you know it's impactful. You know it's important, and then, like all good drama does on television, it rips your heart out of your chest and absolutely shatters it to pieces. But it's such a beautiful moment, and this very like thin gold, strand of story is weaved in there amongst this rainbow of wonderful stories and characters that are just being deeply developed. But this one, which is, I think you could argue, is probably the flattest character of all, you're deeply invested in because the writing is that good. The acting is that good. That actor also deserves an Emmy because it's just incredible what he can do with such brief instances on the camera. I mean, it's just... What do you guys think of Hammer? Because I was so taken with this character.
I actually think he's the underdog of the entire series, with Uhura a close second, because she's not in the prominent role we know her in. She's just a cadet. I love how she's rotating through all the different shift assignments within the ship. I thought that was kind of cool, which allows you to see other stories, right? The Hammer Uhura bond that develops, kind of the last two that you think would bond in a sense, and that winds up happening, again, a testament to the writing. And then to have the guts to kill him off, is such a big thing. Now, if we never had which we've had this discussion before, if we wouldn't have had Game of Thrones, because that was the real series that took characters that you really cared about and killed them in the first season, killed them in the third season, whatever it is.
Bean,
what was that?
Rest in peace, Sean Bean, yet again.
Yes, exactly. But now you have, Trek take, which, and that's the other thing too. We know where this is going. We know the characters that are going to be in those seats when original series starts. And they still got the guts to kill the engineer in the first season, and we're not getting Scotty. I thought we were going to get Scotty. We're not. We're not even close. Well, maybe we are close to that. I don't know. But we're not getting Scotty. That's already been...
We get a glimpse. We get a very short glimpse of his hand and hear his voice. And, I mean, we talk about the writing a lot. And we did with Picard for sure because it was unfreaking believable. But way to come out with a spin-off series that I honestly don't think a lot of people were all that excited about. I don't remember a lot of people hyping this show up before it dropped. But the second this show hit, it was like, I mean, Lord Uther was texting me like, dude, you gotta watch this thing. Like, it's not even a choice. I will come to your house and like beat you up if you don't watch this. Any Trek fan, whether you started like I did with Next Generation or you started with the original series like my dad did, I showed my dad this show, and he's in his 60s now. He works hard all day. He was like playing with the kids, and then he's like sitting there, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna nod off, and he's not even gonna watch it. He was on the edge of his seat, and at times he's like, holy shit. I mean, that's compelling freaking television at its finest. Now, I showed him Picard, too, a couple episodes of that, and he liked it, and he's like, oh, that's cool. He's old now. I'm like, yeah. But this actually, like, grabs, in a way that Cobra said, you can tell that there was some real synergy going on, because when things are just meshed well and work well, the work product shows. Like when you have good energy, good connection, good teamwork, And I think that's why every workplace strives for this. You deliver a product that's just unparalleled. And the fact that this show has not won more awards is just absurd. It has a 99% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is
Really?
Certified fresh.
certified fresh, 8.2 out of 10 on IMDb, which is pretty strong. 94% of Google users like the show. That's fucking incredible. Excuse my French. I don't mean to curse. But I could probably bleep that in post. But it's just, if you have not watched New Worlds and you're an avid Warp Core fan, please check this show out.
It's not
that
too
good.
late.
It's not too late, and season 2 is a week away. We're filming this, of course, on the 8th of June, and I have to say, fellas, this is something I look forward to tremendously. But I mean, let's talk about the Gorn. I was skeptical that they were going to be able to come up with a basically bad guy that was going to rival the Klingons or rival the Romulans or the Cardassians, the Borg, the Dominion, the Jem'Hadar, or Q. Like, how are you going to top such incredible canon of villains? And then they bring back the Gorn of all things, which I think was in one original series episode.
Man in suit.
It was incredible, that episode, but I would not have suspected they did what they did. I mean, this is
Well, and you're getting Alien meets Star Trek, right? I mean, because that's what the Gorn are going to be. I mean, they basically described, and maybe Cobra can give us a little. Well, you haven't gotten that. When you get to that episode and you have a good chance to view it, find out, because I don't know if they. I mean, are they purposely Urza? Are they purposely ripping off Alien? Or do you think they're parodying it?
I think it's an homage because there's a lot of Easter eggs. Like in the first episode, Chris Pike is watching a classic sci-fi movie, black and white.
The day the Earth stood still.
Yes, there's a lot of homages and nods to the sci-fi that built the original series and just sci-fi in general. I think that what they did with the Gorn is brilliant. I personally, I was too young when I first saw Alien and Aliens and Alien 3. I can't even play the Sega game because it still kind of freaks me out. It's kind of scary.
Right.
It's like a 16-bit game, like, oof. But it really captures, in a new way, the horror of Alien, which, honestly, a little campy. Like, looking back, it was freaky at the time, a little sort of cheesy now, I think, because it's sort of been parodied so many times. But the way they've treated it is such a Star Trek way of bringing about that same level of horror. Because Star Trek kind of shies away from, like, the real magnified, horrifying moments, the real magnified, like, sexually tense moments, the real magnified moments of anything. But this kind of, like, it leans just enough into it, but also gives you kind of the understanding of this is a life form that maybe we don't understand completely. It opens up the doors of, like, this is truly strange new life. That's it's an intensity that I think they're building towards something just that much more compelling. So that's my take on that. I love the fact that it's an homage to Alien. I don't know if that was necessarily intentional or if it's accidental, but I have a feeling it was probably intentional.
Well, I think the idea, especially when they're first introduced, was to, I mean, we'd seen Borg, which was technology run amok, and we'd seen the Dominion, which was this militaristic society that was bred for combat and so forth. And I think Ursa hit the nail on the head. The idea of this ravenous, unknown species that, I mean, its primary biological instincts are to, eat flesh and provide for their young. And so, like, I think that was the impetus. We really don't have that in Trek. When the Borg were first introduced, they kind of freaked some people out, and then the more time we spent with them, the less menacing they really became. overall. So I think that the Gorn was supposed to be sort of the one element of Star Trek that they really had not done yet, which was just coming up against something. It's like Bruce the Shark in Jaws, like just something that's they're just eating, feeding, relentless, machines, programmed by pure biological instinct. And so I think that gives it kind of a new direction. I mean, you're not, you might match wits with a Q, and you might have great back and forth chess matches with that. But this is just more about, I've got to get out of here. They're going to tear me limb from limb.
Survival of the fittest, and that's
Exactly.
what the Gorn are all
Exactly.
about.
They're just about pure evolutionary apex predator, etc. A real quick thing on finishing with Hemmer. When I watched his performances, I got a very big Odo kick
Yes.
from DS9. That sort of gruffness that underneath you saw glimpses of the tenderness. And I thought that this performance, in some small ways, reminded me of that of Constable Odo, and how he interacted with the DS9 crew. So that was my impression, why I liked him. All right, a quick variation, gentlemen, on a game that we like to play at the end of each episode, but this one is slightly different. Concerning Ethan Peck and his interpretation of a role and a character that we seemingly know inside and out, but are always surprised with new details. If we're going to grade Ethan Peck's performance as Spock on a scale of 1 to 7 Nimoys, 7 being, the ultimate Nimoy, if you will, and knowing that there have been others that have taken up the mantle, Zachary Quinto comes to mind, and so on. How, over this first season, with all the different variations of Spock, where he's engaged to a beautiful Vulcan woman who's very Vulcan, and his interactions with Chapel and Uhura and Pike and the rest, how many Nimoys do you think Ethan Peck brings to his own style of this beloved character that we've known for 60 odd years?
I'm going 7. And I was going to go 6 because it's like, well, Nimoy is Nimoy, so there really should be no 7 out of 7. But I will. I feel that better than Zachary Quinto.
Yes.
I think by a long shot. Because we're gonna see James T. Kirk, and the guy playing James T. Kirk is not even close to playing it like Shatner, which I think is gonna be on purpose, right? Because we see him in the very last episode, Urza, where this is Spock. Like he's the perfect choice, does the perfect acting, even his vocal timbre, to use your words,
Thank you.
are right in line with Nimoy with that steady pace, doesn't show that emotion. You can hear the thought and the inflection that he uses when he speaks as well. So I will go 7 out of 7 Nimoys.
Okay.
I'm also going to go 7 out of 7 Nimoys. I do think that they did a nice service to Spock with Zachary Quinto's character, but I have a lot of problems with what they did to the original series cast overall in those movies. Notably Uhura. I love Zoe Saldana, but I'm sorry, that was not a good Uhura in my book. Great Gamora, but Uhura not so much. This Spock is perfect. I mean, there's nothing more I can really say. Everything from start to finish this season has given us, I think, the image of a young Spock. I believe that in, however many years, this could be Leonard Nimoy's Spock on the bridge of the Enterprise. It's very much a believable performance. I think bringing T'Pring in it the way they have, and adding some flesh to that character, showing us a side of Vulcans we've never seen before, which seems impossible at this point. It's just tremendous. I mean, everything about how they've put all this together, the little nuance they had by bringing Kirk into those couple episodes, that Kirk honestly strikes me as a young Kirk, who has a lot of growing to do, but is also very brave and all the things that we expect from Kirk. And I think Chris Pine did a great job with Kirk, and I'd even put that Kirk we see in this series above his performance at this point, because again, I think it gets back to the writing. The actors are doing a outstanding job. I'm not taking away from their performances, but really the writing room has given them the material with which to become these characters we know and love. And that also brings me back to Uhura too. I think she's a 7 out of 7.
Oh, yes,
7 out of 7
easily.
Nichelle Nichols. And I think Nichelle Nichols would really have loved what she's done with that character.
Right.
I think we're seeing, they're treating the source material with such deep respect, which I think, because we've got a lot of like remakes and spin-offs and rehashes and re-envisionings in Hollywood right now, whether it's TV, streaming, movies. Marvel's like the easy one to go to. There's a lot of Marvel films that kind of play with the source material too much, and it can be very successful, and you get a lot of like, they kind of went a little too far from that, but it's still good. And then you've got DC that goes way off the reservation from the source material, and you're like, oh, what are they doing? Ben Affleck as Batman. Although I will say, I'm really looking forward to The Flash.
Yes,
that movie
Gary.
is incredible. Even Ben Affleck looks good in the preview I've seen. I'm like, okay, that's a believable Bruce Wayne.
He's not the Batman I'm rooting for in that picture, but that we're getting.
Oh no, he's definitely not. Michael Keaton is hands down. Michael.
And that's
to
for
me,
Lord
Val
Uther.
Kilmer will always be Batman, but Michael Keaton is the number one Batman. So, because Val Kilmer couldn't do it anymore, unfortunately. I would love to see it though. But it's amazing just the product and the quality we're getting. And I love the fact that the writers' room, the showrunners want to do 20 episodes. They want to do more per season because they're condensing so much. But I hate to say it, but it's successful. Like, it's really good what we're getting. The thing is, it's like, I worry about fleshing it out. I want them to. And, honest to goodness, hand to God, I want them to do more every season. But it worries me because will it grab me the same way these super condensed, ultra refined, like you think about it as a distillation process. They have to bring every word, every shot, every angle, every light, every grip has to be just so we get everything we need in that, however long each episode is. And that, to me, is just, you got the top tier of television ever made, and they've pushed this series into that conversation.
I am ready for season 2, gentlemen.
Yes. Hands down.
Sort of my last thoughts on the whole matter. What storyline, or I think Urza kind of mentioned it earlier with the doctor character. What's one thing from season 1 it's a deal breaker if they don't revisit it or expand it or do it in season 2? Like, season 2 will be considered a gross failure if they don't carry over something from this season 1 that you enjoyed. And what would that be?
You've got to have a Gorn episode. I think you've established that and I know they know this because we have contacts there and we have so many other people that watch the show.
Kiva Goldsmith, 7 out of 5.
Right. Kurtzman or
That's still a
Kurtzman,
thing,
whatever
by the
his name is, that guy, he listens to. But now you've created this big bad, so you've got to see them at some point. My underdog thing that I hope we see at some point, I want to see the Tholians. So I'm hoping that we'll see a Tholian web at some point, like we saw in the original series. So I think you've got to see the Gorn. I'll stop there.
To narrow it to just one thing would be a disservice to how distilled and how perfect this season was.
Yeah.
I think there's three things that you need to see, without a doubt. And I think you need to see the Nunyan Sung play out. I think we need to see, and I will say I read a little brief intro of episode 3 of season 2, and it makes me very excited because I just drew a connection to a certain cast alum, shall we say, that may make an appearance in that episode. It's not in the synopsis, but given
Wonderful.
the circumstances with which this episode is happening and who it is centering around, I feel like it's a very distinct possibility that we could see some cameo that I would really enjoy. So I think they need to deliver somehow on that canon. Now, I tend to reach when it
The
comes to
Cisco!
establishing stories. The Cisco would be good. No, I think you need to see a Klingon, and
With old school
we've
makeup.
talked- Yep, with old school pre-facial ridges makeup. We've heard a little bit about the Klingon mystics. We've heard a little bit about this and that already. I think it's time we see a Klingon in season 2. Now remember the relationships with the Klingon Empire. TOS is like a very, tense sort of. They're kind of at war, but they're sort of
Cold
neutral.
War.
There's a
It's a
neutral
Cold
zone.
War. Like the
It's a
Reagan
very
years.
Cold War. Yeah.
Hey,
So there's a hot war, ostensibly that predates that.
yes.
Right.
So I think as much as we need to see the Gorn is my number 3. As much as we need to see the Gorn, there has to be some resolution to the Gorn to introduce the Klingons as the next big bad for season 3, which is a very, very easy thing for them to do and establish. I don't think they'll have any trouble. The writers have done such a phenomenal job so far. Now, if I could add one more,
Sure.
I'm breaking the rules. I'm going to steal a page out of Lord Uther's book. If I could add one more, we got to see more Dr. Aspen. We've got to see Cybok again. I don't think you tease such an enormous character, and you definitely don't get such an incredible actor and, I got to say, compelling antagonist and not revisit that, at least for an episode.
Yeah.
Q was only in, 12 episodes of The Next Generation? And look at Q. You don't mention Star Trek and people go, oh yeah, Q, John Delancey. The guy from My Little Pony, right?
Well,
That's my...
I've been thinking about the Cybok thing. The only problem if we want to go, canon-wise, the only problem you're going to have is Uhura should know about Cybok then. So that's the only slight thing.
Possibly. There are ways around that. I'm just saying, with Star Trek, anything could happen. But with that, I think it's a good time. We've given our ratings out of Nimoy's. It's time to rate Season 1, Strange New Worlds. 7 out of 7 warp cores. Let's jump in. I'm gonna defer to Cobra to start us off.
Well, from what I've seen, this show is a top-notch 7.5. It is very in the spirit of classic Trek. It doesn't feel like a retread. It doesn't feel like they've just grafted old episodes and given them a new paint job. This feels like they are pushing the envelope in storytelling, in wanting to have us engage with these characters. And I applaud the creative decision to, as I say, make it more of its own individual pieces that will then add up to a satisfying puzzle when you put them all together, rather than, again, as is popular, and don't get me wrong, I love serialized shows as much as the next one, but not asking for some of that narrative investment, like, wait, how are they connected? Who is it? This one keeps it nice, lean, and mean, and like I say, whoever came up with that in the writer's room, in the producer's room, it is truly a fresh take on New Trek. So, 7.5 for me.
7 out of 7. I've actually been thinking about. Is Pike gonna move up my list of captains? And is this show going to move up my ranking of Star Trek TV shows and movies? Is it going to push? And to me, I've always said, if you're asking the question, you kind of know the answer, right? Should I wear this to work today? Well, I probably shouldn't, right? So if I'm bringing this up, I kind of know the answer. It just might happen.
And I think that's a perfect segue for my rating, which is a perfect 7 out of 7. I brought it up. You kind of knew my answer. I think this is the finest Star Trek offering we have ever seen, and I loved Season 3 of Star Trek Picard. But again, taking it as a whole, and so far we only have one season, I strongly give this a 7 out of 7. I would even say this is the looping around the sun, where they're pushing the warp core beyond its limits. And I think they have a very high potential of bringing themselves back to an era of Star Trek in the household. Star Trek being the water cooler conversation at work. Did you catch the latest episode? My only criticism is it's not broadcast on TV for free for all to see. And it's not 52 episodes, one every week, forever, all year. I know no TV series has ever done that, but
Well, if the writers stay on strike, they may show up on CBS, so keep your eyes open.
and that I have to say, I think what we're seeing in streaming right now, with the incredible writing we're seeing, with the delicate consideration they're giving source material, we would be remiss to not live up to the demands of the Writers Guild. I'm sorry, but they need to step up to the plate and pay these people more. Give them the benefits they want, because they are delivering the finest content I think the world has ever seen. And, or I should say at least the United States, and probably Canada. And
Crying out
but
loud.
you've got to really take into consideration. We say it all the time. This is the new golden era of TV. In 50 years, when we're all 70 years old, we'll be the ones looking back saying, I mean, shit, yeah, that was pretty incredible time for television. This is our dozen spin-offs of the same show, because all the shows are great. This Strange New Worlds is like our, God, am I going to say mod? I don't know. This is
nice.
This is our Frasier to the original series is Cheers.
There you go.
I mean, it's really just it's an amazing time to be alive, because we've seen all that golden era TV. We've seen all of this classic Star Trek. We've talked all the films. We've talked Picard. We know what Star Trek is truly capable of. And we're going to go back. We're going to revisit original series. We're going to go through all the other TV shows we haven't covered. Maybe not Discovery. But this is the cream of the crop. And we all know Mean Gene, the cream of the crop, to the top. So I will leave us with that. I appreciate our audience for boldly going where no Warp Core podcast has gone before, and that is to Strange New Worlds, to seek out new life and new experiences, to hopefully see Rebecca Romaine develop this Una character into something we all come to love and enjoy for many, many years to come. Not to mention the rest of this incredibly gorgeous cast that I cannot harp enough how pretty everyone is. I mean, they're just eye candy for all kinds. Thank you so much to Paramount Plus for giving us this wonderful, wonderful piece of streaming TV. I am UrzaMaster, that is Lord Uther, and joining us as always, Cobra Cobretti. Live long and prosper.